Hi guys, welcome to today's episode of Bible in a Year, and hope so far we have been having interesting conversations regarding Genesis. Genesis is going to be coming to an end very soon, where we see Exodus coming in and ushering into the promised land where God wants children of Israel to go to. However, let's start with Genesis. So far, we've seen Jacob marriage to Leah and Rachel, and how Leah and Rachel has some beef over the love of Jacob, because Jacob loves Rachel and then does not so much love Leah. So today we are doing Genesis 31 to 35. So today's chapter, Genesis chapter 31, sees Jacob hearing from Laban's sons that Jacob's possession is becoming too much. So Jacob rather tells Rachel to get prepared so that they can flee, because Laban tends to change the goalposts every time regarding Jacob's wages, for he has cheated Jacob so far. He will say, okay, the flocks that give birth to spotted ones, they are yours. Then when it becomes that all of the flock gives birth to spotted ones, young ones, he changes the goalpost again and say, oh, they are no longer spotted. Those are the ones that will be yours. And then when the flock gives birth, they become no longer spotted. So Jacob's possession becomes so great. So Laban's possession became Jacob's possession, because Jacob was blessed so much by God. So Jacob says, you know what? Let's run away. So Laban heard of it and then took his household, and then took his army, and then overtook Jacob and asked Jacob, why are you running away from me, as though you stole something from me? So Jacob says, I'm running because I fear that you might take away your daughters. In terms of how you've been cheating me, how you've been changing the wages, you might take away your daughter from me. However, if you find anything amongst my household that was stolen from you, you can kill the person. Now, unknown to Jacob, now this is why I always say again, be sure of who you are marrying. But by virtue of a person who marries a cheat, not by virtue of association per se, when you know that this person is a cheat and you condole it, and the person is a defrauder. And now I'm not referring to cheat as though someone who is unfaithful. I'm saying someone who is a cheat, who deceives people and all of that. By virtue of association, you'll be part of that equation. So in this chapter, Rachel, unknown to Jacob, Rachel had stolen one of Laban's gods. And then when Laban entered different tents wanting to search, he got to Rachel. Rachel sat on that god, which gives me an impression that most likely that god is something that is very, very small. Rachel sat on the god, sat on the thing, and did not stand up. And then when Laban entered Rachel's tent, says, wow, he wants to search everywhere. Rachel says, oh, I'm on my period. A woman is I'm on my period per se. So I cannot stand up. Forgive me, my Lord. And then Laban searched everywhere. She deceived her own father. And then everything. So like I used to say about covenants, Laban and Jacob became friends afterwards. They made a covenant. And then they said, this is a hip and a pillar as a testament to our covenants. So that's the whole of chapter 31. Chapter 32 sees Esau coming to meet Jacob. So Jacob has said, okay, you know what? Since God has said, let me go back to where my father is, where my father's land and all of that. So he wants to make sure that he cushions the effect of, he definitely remembers that he has offended Esau rather. Jacob remembers that he has offended Esau. And there's no how you're going to meet somebody whom you've stolen everything away from him, and he will not want to take revenge. So what Jacob does is to send different flocks, different gifts, animals and all of that with his servants in batches, just to cushion the effect of Esau, because Esau heard that he was coming to meet him. So Esau also decided to rise. When the servant of Jacob came to meet Esau and said, oh, your servant is coming to meet you, blah, 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 Esau decided to, let me go and meet him. And then he took his army and the likes. So when Esau was getting close, the Bible records that Jacob sent his people away and then became alone. And then in the later part of that chapter, Jacob wrestled with God. God in the form of a man, God in the form of an angel. Jacob wrestled, because in truth, no man can wrestle with God. But Jacob wrestled with God in the form of a man, in the form of an angel. In Genesis chapter 33, there was a final encounter. So the whole process came to fusion, where Esau met Jacob, and so far they were cool. So Esau did not have that vengeance anymore because God has blessed him also, right? God has blessed him also. Although he did not have that as much blessing as he would have Jacob, but God blessed him also. So he became blessed by God also. And so when he met Jacob, he's like, "Oh, let's go home. I have come to take my brother. Let's go home. This is your family. Let's go home." So Jacob was telling Esau, "Let these people, you can go. Let me stay with my flock. Let's journey in the bits that we can journey, because these people are fragile. They might be sick. They might need attention. They will not walk as fast as your army can go. So I will not delay you. So go, I will meet you forward." So that's the whole of chapter 33. And then Jacob comes to Canaan, where he also erected an altar and called it El Elohi Israel. So then chapter 34 sees an incident that tests the fatherhood of Jacob. And this is the reason why I said it tests the fatherhood of Jacob, because Dinah is a daughter to Leah. So I'm thinking to myself, if that had happened to one of Rachel's children, would Jacob have had the disposition he had towards this incident like he had towards Leah's incident? Would he? Now, what happened in chapter 34 was one of the daughters of Leah, which is Dinah, was seen by Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, and then he had interest in her, forcefully had her way with her, and then wanting to marry her this time. Meanwhile, you had to take permission or sort of pay a bride price before you go into a woman. But then he had interest in her, loved her so much, and then entered her before, reaching out to the father and the like. So when they came to Jacob that your daughter has been defiled and the likes, Shechem and his father's house came and said, "Okay, what do you want from us? Can we marry your daughter?" Now the sons of Jacob said to them, "Yes, you can marry our daughter on one condition, that all of your men become like us, all of your people become like us." And in this stead, because the children of Jacob and the people of Jacob are circumcised, so they want the people of Shechem, the people of Hivite, to be circumcised. And then he says, "Circumcise your people so that you can become like us, and then we will give our daughter to you." Unknown to those people that the people they are talking about comes from a father of a cheat, per se. You can see how there's this journey of people who come from a loins of a person who cheats. This is not what I'm trying to portray, but I'm trying to give you that there's a certain way a pattern would not be destroyed, even good or bad. There's a pattern that happens with your family. So you need to, it is your disposition to check. It is in your own interest to check the pattern that happens in your family so that you can see if it's a good one, a bad one, and break it. So far, Rachel cheated. The sons of Jacob now, because of the incidents, also cheated. Unknown to Jacob also that they were going to do this. So what they wanted to do was tell the people of Hivites to circumcise their people so that Shechem can marry their daughter Dinah, their sister Dinah. However, in the bid of that circumcision, they will become weak. The sons or the army of those people will become weak. And what they will do is to, what they did, not what they will do, what they did actually in the Bible, in the later part of that chapter, was to destroy, kill, take everything. So when they became weak from circumcision, about 3 days, they killed everybody. Total annihilation. They destroyed the people of Shechem. They killed Shechem and his father Hamor, and then took over all their properties. And then Jacob said, "Why have you troubled me by making this obnoxious decision? Why did you do this?" And their response were, "Would we watch while they treat our sister like a harlot?" So that ended that chapter 34. Chapter 35 sees Jacob returning to Bethel after he fled from the face of his brother Esau. So while they were sojourning, 2 people died here. Rebekah's nurse died, and then in that journey also, Rebekah gave birth to Benjamin, and also see her give her last breath. Now, the later part of that chapter talks about the 12 sons of Jacob. Now, the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's first son, and Simon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Then the sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. Then the sons of Bilhah were Rachel's maidservants were Dan and Naphtali. And then the sons of Zilpah Leah's maidservant, I beg your pardon. Leah's male servants were Gad and Asher. So these were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Aram. So the later part of that chapter also sees the death of Isaac, where Jacob and Esau buried their father Isaac. Our main chapter for today would be the part where Jacob had an encounter with God, where he wrestled with God in the form of an angel. So the Bible tells us that Jacob was left alone. And there's just one understanding that I get from it. In order to encounter God, albeit you need the church as a community to foster your growth in spirit, in order to walk with God, in order to encounter God. If you notice, Abraham, Isaac, all of them, they had an encounter individually. There was no collective encounter. Yes, the grace is there for a collective shared encounter, but then in order to know God personally, to sojourn in that journey, to encountering him personally, you have to be alone. When he was alone, he wrestled with God, and he asked God to bless him. Then you shall no longer be called. That was the encounter. What happens with such encounters with God is there has to be a change in perspective. There has to be a change in your mindset and change in how you order your directions. Whenever there's an encounter with God individually, there's always a change. So the manifestation of that encounter should be visible, either by others, or you should know that routine has changed. Certain things will not happen anymore. I hope you have learned something. I hope you remain blessed, and I hope you gain an understanding. See you in the next episode. Bye.